And so without further ado, any questions at the end that for whatever reason, someone has to leave, we can't get to, etc. You can email us or call us and ask whatever questions you have about Civil War or anything else genealogy. So on that note, we are going to go ahead and get started. Okay, good. Okay, good. Yes. Okay, so as we know, Civil War officially started in 1861 through 1865. So you're trying to research, you want to confirm that your Robert Smith did serve in the Civil War. So the first thing you want to find out is how old was he? If he was, in the 1860 census, if he was 5 years old, there's a good chance he didn't serve. You can look at who he was living with, is especially if you have a common named ancestor, knowing who his family was. That's how it's going to help you track him and figure out if you have the right person. Also, let me go to the map. As you can see the map, the blue are the Union states, the red are the Confederate states, the gray tan color, whatever that is, are territories, and the striped states. There are 5, those are the border states. Those are the ones that literally we weren't really sure. Were they Confederate? Were they Union? Especially as we know here in Missouri, that got real gray real fast. But that becomes important trying to track. Okay, so if you have someone from Wisconsin, good chance they were in the Union. You have somebody from Louisiana, there's a good chance they were in the Confederacy. So using that knowledge, those border states, you've got Missouri, Kentucky, West Virginia, Maryland, and Delaware. If they were from those states, you're going to have to do more digging to figure out which side, if they were Union or if they were Confederate. You're going to have to do a little more digging. Something else to keep track of is, if you're trying to make sure you have the right person, is when and where they died. If Robert Smith died in 1864, he's from Wisconsin, but he died in Georgia. Okay, he probably died during the Civil War. So you keep, it's location, location, location. That's a big key to figuring out who you're looking for. Okay. So let me do something real quick here. There it is. Get him out of the way best I can. That's not going to work. Okay. My apologies to those at home. That won't get out of the way for me. So we're going to begin your research. You always want to look. We've got 4 different indexes that you can look at. The NPS stands for National Park Service. They have a database that is called Civil War Soldiers and Sailors System. And you can put in the person's name. And you can, on the left-hand side, there are filters, and you can narrow down Union or Confederate, what state they were in, if they were infantry, cavalry, whatever, they fought, wherever they fought, and you can get your results that way. Ancestry Library Edition. Now, we use Library Edition because, obviously a lot of people have their own, some people have their own Ancestry subscriptions. But for us, that just means that with Library Edition, you can still get to the index. It's the Civil War Soldiers Index. My Heritage Library Edition, another database that MCPL has, is that one. And then FamilySearch.org. And for those of you at home that are joining us from wherever, we would love to know where you're from. Your local library might have some of these. If you don't have a Ancestry account or a MyHeritage account, but you can always get on the NPS website, and you can always get on Family Search from wherever you are in the world. There's also an alternative to the searches. It's a website called militaryindexes.com/Civil War, and they have links. And this link is hidden somewhere in those 4 pages of handout, but it is on there, I promise. But there are indexes on there that they've got national or federal lists, but they also have them by state. So that will help you narrow that down. And two at the top, NPS and Ancestry have the asterisk. That means that it has a link in the index to the regiment that they served. Come on, there we go. So this is Wellington's, this came from the NPS website. So it has obviously his name, his regiment, it gives what company he was in. He went in as a private, came out as a sergeant. The alternate name, that simply means that's the National Archives roll number. So you're going to know exactly where that reference comes from, or this. So if all the databases and all the internet sites are down all over the world, you can still look at microfilm. So that's where those are. And the thing is, this one, like I said, NPS and Ancestry, because that's blue, you can click on it and it gives you the regiment. This is kind of an overview. Because when we're studying our Civil War ancestors, we want to not just names, dates, places, but what kind of life they lived. What did they, how far did they have to travel? What did they do? Well, this gives you a rundown of this particular regiment, the dates, the places, what battles they were involved in, what they did. So this kind of helps you track Robert's movement about what he did. And at the very bottom, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a called View Battle Units Soldiers. If you click on that link, that actually brings up a list of every soldier that was in the 64th New York Regiment. So you can see a whole list and you can look and see, you know, if you're curious, how many were there? It's going to give you that list. Again, we're trying to figure out, did he for sure serve, or what side? We figured out Robert served. Did he serve Union or Confederate? Well, pictures. If you are lucky enough to have a picture, fantastic. And if you have it in color, have it framed and saved forever. But yeah, so the thing is, obviously, a lot of them are black and white. Because, you know, you heard the blue and the gray. Well, it wasn't always like that, especially when the war first started. They went to war with what was on their back. They wore, you know, or their, you know, local colors or whatever. They did not have official uniforms for a while. But the pictures, you can look and like the trouser colors. The darker trousers were for officers. The lighter colored trousers were for the enlisted. The stripes. So there were red stripes for artillery, yellow stripes for cavalry. And you may be thinking, well, it's black and white. How can I tell? Well, if you've ever looked at a black and white picture, red is going to come off darker than yellow. So that's another clue that's going to help you. Their kepis or their hats are in their jackets. So again, the artillery had red. And the they had shell jackets. Those are also known, we used to call them waistcoats. So the ones with the short jackets, those are cavalry and artillery. And then the cavalry had yellow trim. Again, the black and white photos, you just kind of look at the shading and see how that helps. Also, if you get a magnifying glass out, we look at the different insignias on the uniform, like he's got here on the shoulder, the middle soldier, if you can see something on a hat, the hat he has an insignia, that will help you kind of figure out what regiment, what company, where he fought. We at MGC, and I'm sure I know other libraries have them, we have a book, The Uniforms of the Civil War, and the thing's like 250 pages, but it's all the different illustrated pictures of the different uniforms, what they wore, when and where. This is a really good resource if you have pictures and you're just trying to figure all this out. Naming conventions. So you have a diary. Robert Smith wrote a diary. And he said that he was in the 1st Texas Infantry, he was in the Lone Star Rifles. He was Confederate. Confederates liked nicknames. The Union, they were kind of boring. They just liked numbers. 2nd Illinois Infantry. State militia, they kind of did a little bit of both. You had the 1st Missouri State Guard. They were also known as the Missouri Tigers. So anybody that's a fan of University of Columbia, there you go. That's how they got their name. The battles. So for the Union, they named their battles after natural objects. Confederates named their battles after towns or something that was man-made. So for the Union, for the Battle of Pittsburgh Landing, because that's where that was the boat landing at Pittsburgh. That's how that got its name. Battle of Shiloh. It's a man-made church. So the Confederates called it the Battle of Shiloh. They're the same battle. So if Robert has a diary and says, hey, I was fighting, it's the Battle of Shiloh, then that's going to tell you that he was a Confederate. So we're using all these clues kind of help us build that, get us that information. Something else, if your ancestor survived to the year 1890, the government did a special veterans schedule. And what they did was they listed the veterans or their widows. So if he didn't survive, but his wife was still alive, they did a census just for them. And you can see up here, we have Wellington's name. He gave his rank. We're going to have the company that he was in. The name of the regiment, so he was in the 64th New York Infantry. The date that he enlisted. And the date is he discharged. He was in for 3 straight years. Never got hurt. I don't know how I did that one. So the page is in 2 sections. You've got the top half and the bottom half. The bottom half, so he was on line, I believe it was 15. So you would go down to the bottom, find line 15, and you're going to get a little more information about him. Going to have his post office address. Any disability. So if he was injured, like I said, he came out without a scratch. So he was generally healthy, but I've seen some pretty interesting descriptions. So there are details there and any other remarks that were made about that soldier. So again, it's going to be them or their widows. Now, again, we're building a picture of what they went through, what life was like in the Civil War. And to do that, we're going to look at figure out where to get regimental histories, we're going to battle descriptions, POW records, cemetery records, as well as more information. And you can tell Library of Congress, Fold 3, and the National Archives are excellent resources in fact, Fold 3, a lot of what they have, they got from the National Archives. So Fold 3, that is what the top screen looks like. The top of the screen looks like. If you go in, if anyone's familiar with Fold 3, if you go on, you have all these different squares with all the different conflicts. Civil War has 3. They have the Civil War, then they have Civil War Union or Civil War Confederate. So if you already know you're looking for Union records, you kind of skip the U.S. Civil War and go to the U.S. Civil War, the Union section, and it will give you the publications and things there. It has compiled service records and indexes for Union and Confederate soldiers. And some of the states have indexes, some of the states have the service records, or some have one or the other, and it's going to depend. So you literally have to go in and look and see what's there. But they're all original papers. Muster rolls, prison registers, etc. Veterans pension applications and widows pension applications. And they have a section for regimental histories. So what you can do is at the top, if you notice, it says overview, publications, and description. If at the top where it says overview, you can just type your soldier's name in the top bar and it will give you results in every publication. If you go under publication and you're looking specifically for like Missouri service records. You can just start typing in Missouri, and you can see what publications are there. And then you click on that publication, you're just filtering results up front. So you don't have to go through all the screens of Robert Smiths that exist. And this is just to give you an idea of the information on fold 3. So for example, this is the service records of volunteers for Union soldiers from the state of Missouri. Turns out that Missouri has service records for the Union, and I believe they have the service records and the service index for the Confederates. I'm not sure because there's a lot in there, but there's over 309,000 records for just the Union's state of Missouri, and it's all been scanned. That's 100% scanned in the fold 3. So whatever National Archives had, fold 3 has completed it. And at the bottom, so you can, and again, this is just kind of for your reference, that M405, that is the number of the microfilm set that National Archives has, and that's where fold 3 got their information. And at the bottom, it was last updated, so I would say that they must have gotten done in 2010. So they've been working on this for quite a while. So the compiled service records. Now, we use the term volunteer to simply mean those who said, I'm going to sign up, I'm going to fight in the Civil War. Like Wellington was a volunteer. He wasn't a career soldier. He showed up, signed up, fought in the Civil War, and he was done. So you're going to see, those are also, known as enlisted. Their papers look like, if you want to go, long index cards that has all their information. It has discharge dates, if they were in the hospital, if they were a POW, whatever was going on, whenever they kept track of them, that information is going to be on those cards. This one on the screen I find kind of funny. So Robert Miller, he was in Missouri. He was 27 years old. He was 5'7". He was blonde. He was blue eye, auburn hair. He was born in Dublin, Ireland. He was a printer by trade. And he signed up on September 4th of 64 in St. Louis. On the back of his card, September of 1864, he was absent. He deserted 2 days later on September 6th. He, I guess, figured out he got in over his head really fast. But that's the kind of information. So if you're trying to figure out, okay, he did join, but then he left. So, but that's the kind of stuff. Again, fold 3 has these. And if they don't have them, so let's say the fold 3 just has the index and they don't have the cards, you can request the documents, pictures from the National Archives. Okay, so Union soldiers, again, they compiled military service records. And again, those are, if fold 3 doesn't have them, you can request them through National Archives. They have pensions, which we will get into more detail in a little bit, because pensions can be a little kind of questionable sometimes. There's also a set on family search and has a National Archives film, compiled records. Basically, this is what we saw on fold 3, but they're also on family search. The regular army, so these are the career soldiers. On fold 3, ancestry and family search, there is a collection called the Register of Enlistments in the U.S. Army from 1798 to 1914. So when you go in and you look at a collection, it may not specifically say Civil War, but if it has so if you're in fold 3 and it has a time frame that fits that, then that's why it's included in there. So not every publication you see is going to specifically say Civil War. They're going to look at the dates that this encompasses. Now we have a set of books, because you have published resources to find even more stuff. It's called The Roster of Union Soldiers by Janet Hewitt. For the Union, there's a 33-volume set. And they are by, I always get those confused with Confederacy, by state and then by county, I believe. But again, it's every soldier that was in the Union. There's also periodicals. Periodicals will have articles anywhere from the list of soldiers that fought in Jackson County to this is where you can find Civil War records. So don't look over periodicals as, yeah, okay. They can have information that you can't find anywhere else. So that's something else to consider as well. Confederate soldiers. Again, they're going to have compiled service records, and we saw that Fold 3 does have some. The compiled on family search, they have the compiled records showing service of military units, Confederate organizations. And then there's a separate set, and I'm going to be honest, I've never looked at the two to compare them, but this is Confederate soldiers served in organizations raised directly by the Confederate government. So there is a difference there. You have a collection called Confederate Service Records on Ancestry and MyHeritage. Now, keep in mind that for both the Union and especially Confederate, because it's going to help, because it's the Confederate. So everything with Confederates is at state level. Is that the website that I referenced earlier, militaryindexes.com/Civil War. They have links for every state. So you can go in and see, so if you're searching in Alabama, then they're going to have links for whatever you can find for them. Again, Miss Gina Hewitt came up with a 16-volume set of rosters of Confederate soldiers. And again, we have periodicals. Periodicals, again, can be anywhere from where to find Confederate records in Texas to these are all the Confederate soldiers that fought in Little Rock, Arkansas. So it's going to vary, but it's always worth a look. U.S. colored troops. There was approximately 186,000 that served. They were in the state militia before the U.S. colored troops, because colored troops became official, quote unquote, in 1863. That's when the government said, okay, they are allowed to fight. Because before they participated, but they might have pulled the wagons or cooked or whatever they did. They weren't actually up front fighting. On Ancestry, we have a collection, the U.S. colored troops military service records. The Fold 3 has 11 different publications for the U.S. colored troops, and I didn't have the room on here to list them all. You want to check the National Archives, check Family Search Research Wiki for researching your U.S. colored troops in the Civil War. There's also on Family Search Heritage and Heritage Quest Online, there's a set of record called U.S. Freedmen's Bank Records. And I'm going to show you an example in a minute, and that's why that's going to help. Then I recently found, it's called African American Civil War Museum. What it is actually a list of those who fought in the U.S. colored troops. It is searchable by name. But the odd thing is, just pulling up the list, it's in reverse alphabetical order. So the Z's are actually first. Come on, where'd you go? There you go. So the U.S. colored troops, this is for Robert Price. This is the Freedmen's Bank. So, because they had to fill out, and you notice it's the top is the date he applied, his mistress, Sally Watkins, his physical description, a place to name his mother or father. There's a place to name any children he had. Regiment and company, so he served in the U.S. colored troops. Company T, I believe. The place where he was born. So if you're researching African American, going to tell you this man was born in Prince George County, Maryland. And when this was written up, when he applied to the bank, he was living in Washington, D.C. So again, if you're researching the U.S. colored troops, a lot of good information on how to get those, where you can go to get those records. Foreign-born soldiers. So you had the largest contingents, Germans, Irish, and British, which the British included the English, Scottish, and Welsh. Then you had Canada, you had other European countries, a few from China, and even some from Mexico. In the Union, 25 to 35% of the troops were made up of foreign-born soldiers. In the Confederacy, 5% of the troops were foreign-born soldiers. Now, for those who came and wanted citizenship, if they came, so let's say that Mr. Robert Miller, who hadn't deserted, and he served, then as soon as his service was over, they would basically grant him instant citizenship. It's like, if you're going to lay your line on for your new country, you're not going to have to wait the 5 years to become a citizen. So they expedited the naturalization for the foreign-borns if they fought. So if you have an immigrant that fought and you're trying to find, naturalization, it's going to be probably right after they were discharged, or at least in that really close time. Native American soldiers, there were over 25,000 that served in the Union and the Confederate armies. There were over 20 different tribes represented for the Union Army. They also had they had 3 different regiments for the Indian Home Guard, and that was the Indian Territory, Kansas, Missouri, and Arkansas. And in the Confederate Army, there were 5 different tribes that were represented there. But when it comes to researching the Native American, their records are pretty much going to be the same as most everybody else that you're trying to find information on. Sailors for the Union, again, they're going to have, it's all their service information. They have pensions. There is a Navy survivor certificate and Navy's widow certificates, and those are on fold 3. So if you have a Civil War ancestor that was in the Navy. The Confederates, again, because it's at state level, the records are in poor condition if they even still exist. So that makes it a little harder. Again, pensions were state issued, not federal. And there's an article online called Civil War and Later Navy Personnel Records at the National Archives. And this is just literally an article online that you can read if you're researching, naval officers or naval personnel who fought for the Confederacy. Now, pensions, I wanted to specifically talk about pensions because sometimes there's a bit of a gray area. So you had to be eligible. In 1862, the first ones to sign up to get a pension, they had to have served 90 days. They had to be honorably discharged, and he had to be unable to support himself through manual labor. So he couldn't, go work at the local merchants and still be eligible for a pension. It did the eligibility kind of eased up over time. In 1870, they eased up, so you just kind of got a lump sum added to that pension. And as long as you were injured, even if it wasn't in the war, if you were injured and you couldn't really support yourself, that was taken into consideration. By 1890, I believe, it was pretty much, if you've made it this far, you get a pension. So they eased up on the eligibility over time. The applications, you have the veterans, and they'll have personal information. They have details of their service, and they will also possibly, not always, they will possibly have, like for mine, I have a Robert Williams, bless his heart. He had his wife's name, when they got married, all of his children listed and their birth dates. And it can vary from pension to pension on what personal information is in there. But this is going to give you his service details. So where was he? What did he do? Who did he serve with? Because they had to have at least, I believe it's 2 affidavits from people who served with them to say, yes, they were there. I was with them. Your widow's pension, same kind of deal. You had to, the personal information, his service information, affidavits again, and his death information, obviously. You have the heirs. So you have when the parents died, because you have a 15-year-old, mom and dad are both gone, they've got no way to support themselves. So they apply for a pension. It's going to have their personal information. And obviously all of these are going to have the veteran's service information because, I mean, you had to prove that your husband or your father served in the war. There is one on here that's not listed and it kind of gets tucked away sometimes. I don't know, a lot of people know about it, called the mother's pension application. My 3rd great grandmother had 3 sons that all served. 2 of them passed in the war. One of them was her caregiver. And she had no one else to take care of her. So she applied for a mother's pension. And she was given her mother's pension. Now, just like these others in there, there's his personal, her son's service information. But the best part was it has her husband's death information. Because she had to prove she's a widow. And so that, again, that you actually find under the widow's pensions. They don't have their own separate category because it didn't happen often, but it obviously did happen. And their index is online. Again, Fold 3 has the widow's pensions right now. They're at about 23% complete as far as having been scanned. So kind of keep that in mind when you're looking. This is what a union pension application card looks like. So if I wanted to send off for Wellington's pension, his pension papers, then I would have all that information. I have the dates that he filed, I have application number, the certificate number. I have all of his service details. So when I go to the National Archives, I can put all that information in and that'll help them find that file for me. Something else, if your soldier didn't survive to 1890, but they had filed for a pension, they might still be in. It's called Pensioners of the Roll of January 1st, 1883. That's a 5-book set. And it is by state and then by county within each state. However, they are not in alphabetical order by county. So you just have to go down the list and look and find them. But that's another resource for pensions, for finding, again, just trying to put more pieces to the puzzle into your puzzle. The Confederates, again, state only, it wasn't federal. They're going to be at the state level. So in Missouri, you go to the Missouri State Archives, see what the information, the information that they have. Also any historical societies and record centers. They had to be disabled or indigent or extremely poor to be able to get a Confederate's pension. They were much more, shall we say, stringent than the Union because it's at the state level, and the funds for the state level are a little more, not as many funds to go around. And they applied in the state where they lived at the time, not where they served. And National Archives has a list of state holdings. So you can go to the National Archives, look for the state, and figure out who has the pensions. Come on. This is an example of a union application. And this is just the first page. A coworker let me use this. And there was actually 3 full pages of information, but this is just the first page to show you what it looks like. It's a completely different form. I'm going to be honest, I kind of like this one better because it gives more personal details about it. Where he served, when he served. Down here says how old was he, where was he born, let's see, how long had he been living? So he served in Tennessee. He was born in Tennessee. It says he served in Montgomery, Alabama. He was living in Oklahoma. So he applied in Oklahoma for his pension. So it gives you all that personal information. Like I said, I think his application is like 3 pages long. Other military records, because there's a lot to be had out there. You have the provost marshal reports, and those were the ones that actually held the draft. If you ever find one, it basically looks like a big ledger and even says provost marshal at the top, and it's the list of everybody that signed up or was drafted. And they had to keep they kept statistics. You have the adjutant general's reports, the U.S. and the state level. The U.S. adjutant general, they're kind of like the keeper of all the papers. So they kept the personnel records, any correspondence or communications they had. We want to look again for regimental and unit histories, and those you can get online. Fold 3 has some unit histories. We have drawers of microfiche with Civil War unit histories back in the vault. We have books upstairs for unit histories. So if you look, you just start looking for those not in the building, for those not from around here. You can always get on our catalog, look and see what you can find in our catalog that might be available for checkout. Go to your local library and ask for interlibrary loan. And they can send, they can maybe see if they can get a copy for you to be able to read. Then we have veteran services, homes for disabled volunteer soldiers. That was actually started in 1865, right at the end of the war, because there were soldiers that they had no family, or they were just so disabled the family couldn't take care of them. So the homes were provided for them. And there's the veterans or old soldiers homes. Similar situation. It started a little later, but they had to have somewhere to go. And if they didn't, the government was trying their best to take care of. Cemeteries. The headstones on the right-hand side, if you can tell the difference, the top one is curved and the bottom was pointed. And some people don't realize this, which at first I didn't either. The top one is Union because it's rounded at the top. If it's peaked, that's the Confederates. That's a Confederate's headstone. Also, if you notice on the Union, they have kind of engraved a kind of like a badge, an emblem where the name and the service information is engraved. Now, the VA has a nationwide gravesite locator. So you can literally go to that website, you can go into search, you can type in a name, and you can find out where they're buried. Now, the caveat to that is, if they're buried in a national cemetery, or if they're buried in a private cemetery but applied for a military headstone, then they're going to be in there. Robert his family did not apply for military headstone, and he is buried with the rest of the family in a private cemetery, so he is not in there. So keep that in mind too. If you look in there and you can't find them, that just means that they're buried outside of, or they're not in a national cemetery and they don't have a military headstone. Cindy's list is, they also have, she has an entire list of military cemeteries. On Family Search, National Archives has a film that Family Search has digitized. It's card records of headstones provided for deceased Union Civil War veterans. And again, we're distinguishing Union and Confederates because Confederates just didn't have the funds or the ability to have these larger programs available. There's also veterans organizations. So if they were a member of if they were Union, they were membered of the GAR, Grand Army of the Republic. They're going to have their service information in there. If there's a lineage society, we have one, there's, I think one called the Sons of the Confederacy. So for you to be able to belong to one of these, you have to have, kind of prove that you directly come from a Civil War soldier. You've got the Union side and you have the Confederate side, and they all got daughters of the Union veterans of the Civil War. So if you're looking for more information, more service information about your ancestor, you can go to contact the organizations and the societies and see what you can find, see, what help they can be as far as being able to provide paperwork and information. Traditional gems that are going to have military Civil War information in them. Again, county histories. The big 1880, 1881 was the big year for county histories. And if your soldier was interviewed for the county history, or if they weren't, or a family member was, and they might mention, give some details, some information about your ancestor service. There are, obviously they're in book form, but they're also on a website called Internet Archive or Digital State Archives. So again, just look through, go to it's the state that you're, so it's Alabama, just kind of go and see what you can find for Alabama. Not sure I like that state today, but it just keeps popping up. Other published resources, diaries and memoirs. The book that's shown on the left-hand side, that was written by an Army nurse. Because she wasn't a soldier, so she wasn't going to get a pension. So she wrote this, to tell her story of what she did while she was being a nurse in the Civil War. And if she could make a few extra dollars on the side to help, that was even better. But it's reminiscence of an Army nurse during the Civil War. So you have these kind of books. People wrote a lot of diaries. There's a lot of memoirs. We have a set of, it's 128 volumes, over 250 books, because each volume has several parts, called The War of the Rebellion, a compilation of official records. Now, these are official records that can, if someone got mentioned, they got a promotion, and there was, the captain was letting his colonel know, then he's mentioned in there. There's a lot of histories, company histories, things like that are in these books. Checking old newspapers, because there are newspapers on Chronicling America, which is from Library of Congress. They have newspapers back to before 1800, but you can get on newspapers.com library edition, as well as Access Newspaper Archive, and you can look for old newspapers and look, because it might be a list of soldiers. Your ancestor might be mentioned, but there might be a list of soldiers from the town that he was from. So again, we're wanting to build their life. See, Percy, periodicals. I mentioned periodicals earlier. They're a really great source for the lists, the information about where to go. Information, in fact, I've seen information there that it even says in there that they got special permission to put it in this periodical, so it might not be published anywhere else. Online essentials, there is a family tree called Civil War Genealogy Toolkit. So it kind of gives you a checklist of things that you can use for your research. Joe Biney's military indexes for Civil War. This one I've mentioned a few times because I absolutely love this website. militaryindexes.com/Civil War. Because it has links for everything you can think of. And again, it's fantastic because it goes to the state level, which when you get into research, you especially Confederates, but you're needing to get to that state level because there might be records at a state level that is not at the federal level because they're able to compile stuff from that state. We have go to the pages, National Archives, Cindy's List, Family Search Research Wiki on how to research Civil War records. You can put in Civil War, probably Confederate records. You can narrow down, or Union records, you can narrow down your choices. We also have military records on microfilm. Probably about 1/4 of what is in the vault is military. So we have a guide. And what was mentioned on the other slide about the official records of the Union Confederate armies are also in microfilm. And again, we have a whole list of unit histories for every region. They're filed by region, and pretty much every state in those regions has some unit histories. It's weird, Roberts wasn't in there, but I don't know. The top websites for Civil War research. Again, you have the NPS we talked about early, because they have this index, service index. They also have regiments and battles, as well as cemetery information. Fold 3 and Ancestry. Again, those you can get through your local library, or you might have your own subscription. And then we have Family Search. Family Search has a Soldier's Index. They have information about the battles. They also have this interesting, it's called FHL, in NARA to FHL films. So if you have a National Archives film number, say M405, and you want to see if Family Search has that on microfilm, and if it's available to be viewed online, you can always go into that page and they just literally have listed. Go down to M405 and you can see what the FHL film number is and look for that film number to find those as well. We just passed kind of vacation season, but sometimes if you want to take, you're interested, you've done the research and you want to know what happened in these battles, what went on. There's a lot of museums. There's a lot of historical and genealogical societies that have Civil War information. American Battlefield Trust Links has something called Learn. They have links to find more information, places you can go. And even from here, we have Battle of Lone Jack down there, the Lexington, Battle of Lexington over here. And because this all started out of COVID, because you have the, everybody stayed home. You weren't go out visit. So they made a lot more stuff available online. So if you really wanted, of a museum in Tennessee that you'd really like to go to, but you just can't travel, you can see what you can find online. And again, they're making more stuff available that way. Now, we've looked for records. So you found the record, you found information. Now you want to deep dive into a little more history. Midwest Genealogy Center has 5 different databases of Civil War information. You can see, it's Civil War in Words and Deeds, American Civil War Letters and Diaries, Civil War Era, that is focusing on, so that focuses on the entire Civil War time frame. Civil War reports of the Union Army generals. So if you have a general that, in your ancestry, and Confederate newspapers. That is from 1861 to 1865, and it says specifically for Alabama, Florida, Georgia, Tennessee, and Virginia. So they have narrowed down your search. So if you have Civil War, Confederate Civil War soldiers that fought out of Alabama, then you can see what newspapers are in there that you might be able to find them. And this is our contact information. Again, we would love to hear from people if you have questions or you have Civil War questions, or you have an ancestor and you struggle finding them, or you want to know how to get their service records. Please feel free to call us or email us, and we will do our best to do what we can. I would like to thank everyone for coming. It's been fantastic. And now we are going to shift and we're going to go to some questions. Does anybody in the room have any questions? Yes, ma'am.
Just to clarify, Maryland was technically considered to be a border state, correct?
Yes. So you're gonna go,
I understand a lot of southern sympathies in Maryland.
yeah, because they're right next to Virginia. So yes, Maryland was a border state. Yes, ma'am, in the back.
So you said if they were from another country and they served in the Union, then if they served the whole time, then they were automatically
Well, if they
naturalization?
yes, if they served, they didn't have to serve the whole time. If they served for at least 90 days and they were honorably discharged, then their citizenship was expedited, because for citizenship, there's a 5-year rule where somebody has to apply. They have to live here for, I think it's 2 years, then they can apply, issue what they call papers, and then they have to wait another 3 years to be given their citizenship. So this just sped that process up.
Where do you find the actual papers that say they were naturalized from that process?
Well, I'm going to be honest, I am not sure, but I sincerely enjoy the questions. I don't know, because then I can find out. Because I mean, that's why there's so much more in this class than there used to be, because people ask questions and I'm like, I have no idea. So I can ask, so we need naturalizations through the Civil War. Yeah, I don't know, but I can absolutely find out if you want to, after class, if you want to give me like an email or some contact information, and I can see what I can find out and let you know. Okay, we're gonna go, just a second, we're gonna go online real quick. Is there anything online?
So yes, right now.
Okay.
The whole class, they were just listening,
Okay,
but now, yes, questions are popping up. Can people out of state access your resources, or must you have a local library card?
okay, well, okay, so regarding accessing our resources, if you live in Missouri or Kansas, but you're outside of our district, then you can you can get either a 6-month research card or a 1-year paid card. You
Send them the link.
Yeah, you do have to come in person to get the card. Now, the paid card is, it's good for a year. It's $70 and it is renewable. The 6-month card is $35 and it is not renewable. So you get to come back and say hello, which we love it when you do that. For anybody outside of Missouri and Kansas, you are eligible for the 6-month research card. Okay, sir, in the blue.
My question quickly was on fold 3 and the information in there. I believe you said, and I've really never been on there yet, but it mostly or largely comes from the National Archives.
Yes.
And is fold 3 membership only, or is there any free information available on there? Do you know that? Fold 3?
Is there membership information?
Yeah, what the price is, or I mean, it is a paid database, isn't it?
Right, well, it is,
You can get it from home through our website.
All through your website?
yes, you
So
can
there
get,
won't be any charge if I go on fold 3?
exactly,
Oh, thank you.
exactly.
And I presume if I were looking for military records from the National Archives, it would be easier to navigate on fold 3 than try to access the National Archives database.
Well, so for example, if you find an index, you find, your person is listed in the index and you want to get let's say it's a pension application and you want to get the pension file, then you would go to the National Archives website and apply And you can either do it, print off their form and do it by mail, or you can do it online. Anything else online?
Another one. Any suggestions on how to get a headstone corrected? My wife's three times great grandfather's headstone has misspelled name and the wrong unit.
Okay, let's see, so the question has to do with how to get a headstone corrected. And was it I'm assuming it's a military headstone.
Wrong unit was that?
Right, so it's a military headstone, so what would probably happen is you contact the VA, the Veterans Affairs, or Veterans Administration, contact them, and, because they're the ones that you would have to, they're the ones you would have got, that they would have gotten it through to begin with, so you would contact them, and they can give you the steps and kind of let you figure, talk to them about what you have to do to get it corrected. Yes,
I assume it's rather difficult to get their records on American Indians who served in Silicon Valley County.
it depends. If they served, then the American Indians would have a file for, now with them, because a lot of them served, but if they went back to their tribe, so getting more information might be difficult. It's not impossible, but it might be a little more challenging. So, yes, sir.
Did you get on this newspaper site from having the card here? Have access to the newspaper site?
Yes, so the question had to do with having access to the newspaper. You're talking about like newspapers.com library edition? Yes, if you have a library card with Mid-Continent, you can even access those from home. Those are accessible. And just so you know, there's a similar one called Access Newspaper Archive. And it's basically newspaper, I call it the cousin, because it's the same setup. It's various newspapers from various places and times.
What was the first one?
It's called Access Newspaper Archive. It is on our page. It is this very first one right here.
And that's the one you want to use?
That one, well, we'll use that one. I always use them in tandem. Makes people I know crazy. My family just rolls their eyes at me because here's newspapers.com library edition. So use both of those in tandem because you're going to have different newspapers from different places and different time frames. Okay, that is yours.
They're just great, wonderful, like phrases, great presentations, like 3
Okay.
exclamation marks.
Okay, good.
Lots of good info. Another one, thank you for an awesome webinar, 3 exclamation
Good.
marks.
Well, I'm glad everyone got to come. And remember, when the class is over, if a question arises and you forgot to ask or you didn't think about it at the time, go ahead and contact us and ask us later. Because I'm all about the questions. I'm kind of a bring it on kind of person. So, because I fell in love with this stuff. So please feel free to ask anytime. If you have any questions at all, just let us know. And if there are no more questions, okay, thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it. Have a great day.